Fathers of Reddit. In honor of Father's Day, what was your don't tell your mother about this moment? A female co-worker of mine was miserable at work one day. I asked her what was wrong. She told me it was her anniversary, and she knew her husband had forgotten. She had preteen girls at home during summer vacation. I knew her home phone number, pre-cell phone era. I called her home phone and one kid picked up. Explained to the kid who I was and that she needed to call dad at work and remind him it was mom and dad's anniversary. And don't tell mom or dad. I called. The next day, she was all smiles. Gosh, he did remember. Brought home flowers and took her to dinner. Mission accomplished. Not a word was ever said about this. Until 6 years later, when she left the company. She hugged me at a farewell luncheon and whispered, "My kids ratted you out. Thank you." You may well have just saved a family a lifetime of trouble with that phone call. One night, I was enjoying a small bit of ice cream after my 4-year-old daughter went to bed. She came downstairs and caught me. So I offered her a small bite, but since she was supposed to be in bed, I said, "Don't tell mom." She assured me she wouldn't. My wife wouldn't have cared anyway, but it was a fun little game to play. After she went up to bed and I was down on the couch, she snuck into the master bedroom where mom was resting. She told mom that I had let her have some ice cream and she was afraid of sugar bugs, so could she please brush her teeth again? My wife just laughed at me the next day. Little shit ratted me out to brush her teeth, something she doesn't like doing anyway. Great story. Kids say the funniest things. My 7-year-old daughter, she left a wrapper on the worktop instead of putting it in the bin. My wife told her to stop being lazy and to put it in the bin. Then my wife found another wrapper on the worktop. However, this one was from me, dad, and not her. My wife said we were both lazy, and my daughter laughed and said, "The nut doesn't fall far from the tree." We have no idea where that came from, but it was so funny. My daughter is 2. I occasionally sneak her chocolates and say, "Don't tell mummy." She immediately runs to her mother and proudly shows them off every time. Every time. When Elle was 12 or so, I walked into my dad's office to find him counting money. He says, "Don't tell mom and you'll find out what it's for." So I don't say a thing. 2 days later, he wakes me up early to run errands with him. We came back with a new, used, but new for us car. He also said, if I don't tell how much he spent on it, he'll let me drive it. It was only a couple $100s, but we were broke and she would have been mad. My mother tried so hard to find out, but I kept the secret. So anytime we were in an open space, like an empty lot, he would let me drive it. I felt like the coolest kid in middle school knowing how to drive a car. Again, don't tell your mother, he says. It was our secret thing, and I'll cherish those memories forever. When I got my permit at 16, I was so excited to drive it for real. I ask my mother if I can drive her around when she has to go out, but she says absolutely not since I have no experience. Well, I can't argue because I don't want to get dad in trouble. This goes on for a few weeks. I keep asking, she keeps telling me no. This finally happened one day while dad was home and overheard. He comes in the room, gives me a nod, and says to my mother, "She's a better driver than you anyway," tosses me the keys, and tells mom everything. I was so stoked and cheering I could drive. I can drive. Dad says, "Drive it? No. If you can keep a secret for that long, you can keep the car too." 20 years later, it's still one of my favorite memories. One night when I was about 8, after I had gone to bed, my dad was playing a Nintendo game, Legend of Zelda, I think. We had both been playing it, but we were stuck. He finally found a secret passage, paused the game, and came upstairs to wake me up. He told me he figured out where we were stuck, snuck me downstairs in a blanket. I'm sure my mom knew. And I got to stay up after midnight on a school night, hiding under a blanket to see where the hidden passage went. It was a silly little incident, but very memorable. My dad and I, around 5 years old, were on our way home from a car show when we were getting followed by the cops. My dad struggled to put on his seatbelt quickly in hopes he wouldn't get a ticket. Unfortunately, we got pulled over. This might have been the first time ever that I saw a cop this close up, let alone speak to one. I was a deer in headlights the whole time. Well, with a cop on either side of the car, the officer leaned in and asked my dad why he was swerving. That dick told the cops I was tickling him. The cops looked at me straight in the eyes and asked if this was true. I was too scared to say anything and just nodded, yes. The officers smiled and said, "Never do that again while your father is driving, okay?" They left without any further words, and my dad gave me the lecture of "Don't tell your mom." Dad and I got pulled over when he tried to get his seatbelt on and blamed it on me, tickling him instead. Dad and I used to rent a movie each week for when Mom had dinner with friends. Usually things like Star Trek or action films. One day, I was about 11. He came home with Blade. We got about 10 minutes in, and he turned to me and said, "Don't tell your mother about this. Let's just say I forgot to get it this week." Of course, I agree. Fast forward 7-ish years. Dad blithely drops at the dinner table the fact that we watched Blade when I was about 11. Silly Dad thought there was some kind of statute of limitations on this. I was in middle school. My father gradually bought computers and monitors for us, 4 kids, and himself and the 5 of us would play World of Warcraft together for many days and always log off 1 hour before Mom got home. We'd rush all the chores in that 1 hour. That's when we had teamwork at its finest. She never knew we all played because she thought it was the devil. Dad, finding 4 other players for dungeons is so hard. There's got to be a better way. Looks around and sees his 4 children. Dad, Not exactly because we were caught in the act, but here we go. When I was 10 years old, I was in a head-on car crash with my dad and my little brother. My dad ended up with 2 shattered feet, and he was in a wheelchair after getting out of the hospital. Now, my dad did stereotypical dad things around the house before this happened, and being stuck in a wheelchair was difficult for him. One day while my mom was out, it was just the 2 of us in the house. Suddenly, I'm being called by my dad to go grab the lawnmower and the strimmer. My dad had decided to cut the grass while in his wheelchair. So 10-year-old me does as she's told, and grabs what needs to be grabbed and everything in as told. I move what needs to be moved into the garden, but there's one problem. Dad can't get into the garden in his chair. The entrance is just too narrow. So my father, being the reckless and mischievous man that he is, comes up with a plan. He's going to lift himself using the garden wall. I'm to collapse the chair and move it through, and then reopen it so he can sit down. The pressure is on. Little 10-year-old me is ready to go. He gets himself up and we manage it in one try. After that, cutting the grass together was fairly simple, but by this point, we'd attracted the attention of the neighbors. My neighbor from across the road was frantic when she saw what we were doing. Husbands from other households were joking. My dad was making them look bad. Then, the jig was up. Mom was home. I didn't get into trouble exactly, but Mom never let us live down. When my son was 6, I was playing Grand Theft Auto late at night. He wakes up and comes to the living room, tells me he can't sleep, and asks if can he watch me play. I say he can, but not to tell his mom. He agrees with a big smile. Maybe after about an hour he is playing, and I'm watching and helping him. He can't stop laughing, driving into people and running from the cops. I was telling him to watch out for the 5 neuro and he asks me what that means. So I tell him it's the cops. He just shrugs and keeps playing. Now fast forward about a week later, and we are all driving in the car. All I hear is a scream, "Dad, watch out, it's the 5 neuro!" And I start crying from laughing so hard, all while his mother is questioning where he learned that. He just says, "YouTube." She found out later that I let him play GTA, but I hope the memory of that is as special to him as it is to me. This story reminds me, back when GTA was the new hot thing to play, my husband had the game. He worked an early work schedule and would pick the kids up from school. One day I had an appointment in the afternoon, and so I came home from work early to find him playing GTA, while my then around 11-year-old daughter was explaining how to do something or other in the game, walking into my darling daughter, saying, "Yeah, you just kill him and run." In an excited voice leaning over his chair eagerly was a whole new paradigm. Later I figured out he set up a way for them to play together, and they'd play until they heard me locking my car out front. Edit, shh, don't tell I figured it out. They both still think it was a secret. When I was in middle school, I was the only one willing to go shopping for groceries with my dad. He didn't want to go alone, and my mom was at school studying for her master's. None of my siblings wanted to go with him. We used to go to Carl's Jr., have a big breakfast, and then we went grocery shopping. Nobody knew, not even my mom, until years later. He would also let me buy any cereal I wanted. That's actually how I learned how to buy good fruit and veggies, how to order meat and fish, etc. When my siblings found out they were angry BC, they would have gone if a big breakfast was on the menu. My mom just laughed. Nowadays, they sneak to have breakfast together before going grocery shopping, since we're all grown up. My dad used to do this too, but not just to the grocery store trips. It was any errand he had. This could be the reason I absolutely love doing errands as an adult. If Dad needed to go to the bank, we'd swing through McDonald's for some fries. Need to fill the gas tank? Let's grab a shake from DQ. He always said if I told my mom or brother, then we couldn't do the extra things. I'm not sure if it was because we were poor or because he always bought me junk. Regardless, I loved it. Not a father, but I was with my dad, and we thought it was a good idea to start a small fire on the porch, the wooden porch. It was made of mostly paper, and we made sure to scatter the embers and everything, but after we went inside into bed, The wind must have kicked up because we came outside the next day, and there was a giant hole burned into the porch. My dad just told me, "Hey, don't tell your mom. I'll get it fixed." He then proceeded to cover it with a small table. She found out anyway, and we're pretty lucky that the house didn't burn down.